Welcome back, everybody. This is Eric and Matt, and this is Life, Liberty, and the Pursuit, your beacon of freedom and the American way of life. Tune in every Friday for a new episode as we dive into the world of liberty and what makes our country great. All right, guys, welcome back to another Friday here on Life, Liberty, and the Pursuit. We hope that you've all had a great week. And we're going to dive into a really cool topic here. We're going to be talking about the 2A culture shock.
Ooh.
All right, there's been a lot of change in 2A culture, but this sort of serves to be a podcast/video, if you're watching here on YouTube, that kind of wants to get into the weeds of how is the face of the 2A changing, the culture of 2A changing. What's the status that the Second Amendment is sitting on right now? Like, what type of status are we dealing with? Like, where are we? Legislation-wise, culture-wise, and how can we, come up with better and more effective ways to protect the rights of all people who want to, keep and bear arms. That's obviously a very important thing to Matt and I, and it would be fun to kind of dive into these changes that we have to accept, and they're not bad things. I certainly don't want anything to sound like we're trying to speak negatively of any of the changes we're going to discuss, unless, of course, it does merit negativity. In some cases it will, but we're going to try our best to be fair and clear and concise in all of this. Before we get started on today's podcast, I'd like to give a thanks to the show's sponsor, WeTheProcessor.com. If you are a business that has been canceled, or your credit card processor has dropped you or pulled the rug out from under you, we feel for you. We understand how hard that can be. But if you go to We The Processor, you never have to worry about the rug of freedom being pulled out from under you. They are a pro-liberty, pro-freedom of speech, pro-2A credit card processor that will always have your back, and you never have to worry about consistency in terms of getting your business serviced. So check them out. You can directly support LLP in doing so. It does seem that probably one of the biggest issues going on right now, in my mind, that the 2A suffers the most from is probably identity politics, as well as the sort of holistic type of two-party system that people keep clinging to. They think that just because a person has whatever letter next to their name, that they can rely on them for a multitude of different things, instead of looking at them each on their individual characteristics, negative or positive. So I think people wrongly place, a lot of support in politicians when they probably shouldn't, right? So there's a bit of that comes into play, but we have seen on the 2A front, in terms of legality and in terms of laws and rules and things like that, which, that's the society we live under, whether we like it or not. We are a nation of laws, right? We're a constitutional republic, not a democracy.
That's right.
So when we look at the situation, it's being handled in the way that the Founding Fathers intended, with separation of powers, at least in theory. In practice, it's hard to say, but there is at least the perception of the separation of powers. Right now, we know the Democrats are trying to pack the Supreme Court. They're trying to nuke the filibuster. There's a couple of Democrats standing in the way of that, as well as a few on-the-fence Republicans.
Yes.
They currently don't have the votes they need to nuke the filibuster. And when it's come to federal gun control, the closest thing I can think of that's even has a snowball's chance of passing would be the confirmation of what's his face? Chipman, yes. Yep. Okay, so when we look at the David Chipman, nomination, they're on a razor-thin edge on that, and there's quite a few people that have questioned some of these Democrats that are on the fence, as well as the Republicans and moderates that are on the fence, about whether or not they are going to vote yay to confirm David Chipman, and they're simply referring to it as a partisan issue that's not a bipartisan issue. So there are a lot of Democrats and Republicans alike that will sit out on a particular bill and vote no for it automatically because they know that the issue is too heavily biased towards one side or the other. That's what a good politician is supposed to do. They're supposed to put their policies as a person over what the policies of the party are. And there's very few Democrats and Republicans that have really done, in my opinion, a good job of actually being representative to a wide variety of people that they happen to represent as a politician. And, you look at Joe Manchin out of West Virginia. He's been doing a
him.
really good job of actually trying to be kind of fair, right? I mean, yeah, his gun his stance on guns has not been overly jump for joy great, but at least he's willing to understand that gun ownership is a very polarizing issue for a lot of people and that they should stay away from it completely. And he's also, respected the constitutional boundaries as well, Manchin has not indicated that he's the kind of person that's going to vote, yay to nuke the filibuster whenever he thinks it's going to benefit one side heavily over the other,
right.
Or that he's not so selfish that he's going to nuke the filibuster just knowing that his party holistically is going to come out ahead on that. So I think it's smart, and it requires, a good bit of good conscience in terms of how you look at things, to kind of go, hey, there's a bigger issue at hand than just me and just this party, and that's the needs of the people. So I think at least the light at the end of the tunnel in terms of 2A and the way we've got to look at it now is that at least there are some people on both sides of the aisle that are trying to do the right thing and are actively trying to do the right thing.
I 100%
It's a short
agree.
list.
Yeah. Well, the last couple of weeks has really shown me that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. Two things. One, that a lot of these states are starting to take control of their own sovereignty, and you're starting to see this with, while they are clamping down on federal gun laws, the states are going back to their roots as having those states' rights and saying, well, you know what, you can do whatever you want at the federal level, but we're not going to have to listen to you because we're going to create a 2A sanctuary, or we're going to add stuff to their actual state constitution that doesn't allow them to enforce any federal unconstitutional laws. And you're starting to see that across the board.
You definitely are beginning to see that. And just like we've mentioned in a couple of previous Gun Gripes and or podcasts, quickly, if you're here tuning in on the YouTube channel, thank you for tuning in. And if you're tuning back in on all of the podcast outlets, thanks for tuning back in. We hope you'll give us a nice comment. Maybe a good like and a share would be helpful. If you're watching this video on YouTube in video form, this podcast is available. Usually, not every single one of them is in video form and gets put on YouTube, but most of them do.
Some of them get hand slapped by YouTube.
Some of them we don't put up for certain reasons, but for the most part, we try to post these on YouTube. So if you're watching on YouTube, you're also familiar with our Gun Gripe episodes, and we've mentioned how much the demographics of firearms ownership has changed so drastically over the years. And even without looking at it from a standpoint of demographics and who's who or whatever, all of that aside, right, all you have to do is look at the way culture has changed the laws, and that's really where the rubber meets the road on this whole paradigm between laws and what people want passed in terms of laws versus what actually gets done versus what advocacy is for a certain thing, or what it means to lobby effectively as a lobbying group, which we'll get into that here in a minute.
Oh, yes, we will.
So when we discuss the minutia of that, all you have to do is look at, and we've referenced these before in previous videos and podcasts, are the changing maps. Like you can look and see where, they went all the way from a may issue state to shall issue, then to constitutional carry. And it's interesting to see that data affect the map in the way that it does. Because without speaking out of school here, let's just say that there are quite a few states that have adopted 110% constitutional carry in their states. And I think that number's well above 20 at this point.
Oh yeah,
if not
I think
more.
it's a significant amount. It's a majority of the states, actually.
Yeah, you could say that a lot of states have constitutional carry now. So that is the ultimate carry permit, is no carry permit.
Correct.
Constitutional carry, the Constitution is your carry permit, right? You have the right to keep and bear arms, and it's just that simple, right? There's already been multiple Supreme Court cases that have determined that the government does not have the ability or authority to tax a right. We look at that with, I believe it's Mayberry versus Madison, if I'm not mistaken. I think that was the case that involved poll taxes. All right, so they were assessing poll taxes in order to try to keep minorities from getting into the polling booths and voting, because they knew that, at the time, they knew that certain people just could not afford it, right? So it was one way that they could effectively keep minorities from voting, and honestly, all poor people, regardless of color. That bill, that requirement to have a polling tax disenfranchised a lot of people. So we've definitely come a long way in realizing, people's ability and right to vote is very important, right? One vote for a person that's alive and the person that is verified to live where they say they are and has a photo ID. I don't think that's asking a whole lot anyway. I won't get into the weeds on that, but they ended up determining that poll taxes are unconstitutional. Okay, so if I have the right to vote, and I can't be charged a tax to vote or some sort of a fee to vote, then why do I have to pay some fee in order to exercise my right to own a firearm or carry a firearm? Certain states have FOID cards, which are basically firearms owner identification cards. Certain cities and municipalities require that sort of thing. So why do I have to pay some fee to exercise my right? Why do I have to undergo this crazy, obtrusive look into me just for me to be able to own a firearm right? So if poll taxes are unconstitutional, then in the same breath, why can't an NFA tax for $200 to own a suppressor be unconstitutional? The Second Amendment doesn't say shall not be infringed except suppressors and shotguns with short barrels and short-barreled rifles and machine guns, right? No, it says to keep and bear arms, and arms is what those items are. So, it's crazy to think that you have to pay a tax stamp and wait a year just to exercise a right. So, I think that there is a change in culture in that the change of attitude that people are going through, Matt, is that they're looking at the situation really from the wrong lens. Like they're thinking about it as being only a gun issue, but it's a natural rights issue, right? Just like you wouldn't want somebody to quell your freedom of speech or censor you. You want to be able to say what you want to say and speak your mind and say what's on your mind without fear of reprisal or fear of some issue occurring. I mean, as long as you're being reasonably respectful and not just saying completely heinous stuff. I mean, I think there's a line people all agree that, like, socially there's discussions that people can have, and it just shouldn't be a problem to be able to say what you want and be respectful to each other, and everybody have an opinion and share their opinion with whoever they want. So just like you wouldn't want somebody infringing on your First Amendment rights, it's important to remember that firearms ownership is a right, and it is a very important natural right that we have and that we possess that men can't give us. Right. So the government doesn't give you the right to bear arms. You are born with the right to bear arms. The Constitution, the Bill of Rights, what it does is it recognizes the things that the government can't do to those rights. So there's a difference. Everyone thinks that the Second Amendment is this governing thing this is a rule that we have to follow. It's not a rule that the people have to follow. It's a rule that the government has to follow. Okay, that is a construct that this country was created under, is that there are certain things that the government shall not do to their citizens, and depriving them of the ability to protect themselves is one of those things.
That's right.
The Founding Fathers said, hey, this is off limits, stay away from this, right? It's not about my ability to go and hunt migratory birds or to go hunt deer or to go shoot a pellet gun in my yard that ultimately they'd probably want you to have some license to own a pellet gun. This isn't about that. This is about what they can't do with our rights, not about what some document gives us the ability to have this right. We're born with that right. We're endowed with these rights by our Creator. It is a natural right. All the Bill of Rights, the Constitution, all these founding documents, they only recognize what the government can't do with that, not what we can and can't do.
So on top of that, I was looking up how many states had constitutional carry. It's currently 27. So we're at 27.
So well over half.
Yep. So that's good. And I know it's been being mulled over in Texas because, I mean, they're kind of on the cusp of constitutional carry. And Georgia, I know.
Succession.
Yeah, and succession.
We won't get into that right now.
Maybe you had a later podcast. But Georgia was also talking about it for a while as well, trying to get it passed with constitutional carry. What really opened my mind when they were interviewing or questioning Chipman about his role going into the head of the ATF. I've always watched those and I'm yelling questions out like, why aren't you asking this? Why this is like these are questions that everyone wants to know about, and they never ask them. It's almost like they're glazing over because they don't want to know the answers. But when I know it was Ted Cruz and it was another senator, his name escapes me, but they asked him the questions that I genuinely wanted to know the answer to, which was really interesting. And they were like, well, if you said you're on board to ban AR-15s or assault rifles, define it. And to watch him try, Chipman, I say him as in Chipman, to watch Chipman try to skirt around that, and then both senators were just hammering him, well, how can I vote for you, one, and vote to ban something if you don't know what the actual definition is? And to hear the reply of, well, my job is to just enforce the law. So that's the wrong answer, because if you look at any law enforcement officer and he nonchalantly says, well, I'm just a cop. You can't use that as an excuse, especially when you're the determining factor of if you're going to ban an assault rifle, quote, assault rifle. And they did a very, very good job of giving him rebuttals of saying that's not a real word. They called him out on it. That's a
Here's part of the
term.
issue. Conspiracy against rights is a federal offense in the United States of America under 18 U.S.C. 241, whatever. If two or more persons conspire to injure, oppress, threaten, or intimidate any person in the free exercise or enjoyment of any right or privilege secured to him by the Constitution or laws of the United States, or because of his having so exercised the same. Okay? So basically, let's see, this title should be fined under this title or imprisonment not more than 10 years or both if a death results from the acts committed in violation of this section, such as kidnapping, an attempt to kidnap, aggravated sexual abuse, or an attempt to commit aggravated sexual abuse, or an attempt to kill. They shall be fined under this title or imprisoned for any term of years or for life or both, or may be sentenced to death. So, basically, I guess that's where you get into the whole idea of qualified immunity and things like that. Mm-hmm. But it certainly does make you think that, U.S. law had the foresight to recognize that even just conspiring to deprive someone of their rights is a crime. And especially if either the conspiring or the action that deprives them of said right involves someone dying or one of these heinous things, that you're actually committing a crime. So at what point, just because there's a letter next to someone's name or a court order said go do this, or the cops decide they're going to go do this, or Chipman tells all his guys, hey, go raid this house, and no matter what happens, we're just going to dust this thing up and clean it up in the media. I mean, not to say that it happens in that exact way. Of course it doesn't, but the view of it from society is that the ATF is a group of people that, are going to come shoot your dog, and they're going to burn your house down, and just for being different, or for them just thinking that you're doing something terrible when you might not.
Right. But, to think how bold that is, to look senators and congressmen and women in the face and say, yes, I plan on banning assault rifles, or he's for banning assault rifles, and then he does not have an actual definition of it. Right. So that lets me know off the bat that it's going to be whatever they want it to be. And one of the senators called him out and said, what you're describing is any magazine that holds more than 10 rounds and larger, a detachable magazine and a caliber higher than 22. And they literally said that's every single rifle in the U.S.
Well, right now that there's all this talk about, the ATF wanting to change the definition of what they consider a frame or receiver on a firearm to be. And right now the comment section's actually open for it. Mm-hmm. And it's going to be open for a considerable amount of time. Excuse me. I would strongly recommend that people go over there and submit a comment to the ATF over there on their site. So that your voices can be heard, right? We look at this bump stock situation. So it's one of these sort of stains on the Trump administration that we all hate to acknowledge because it sucks, right? But the fact that, Trump used executive orders to ban bump stocks, a very trivial thing. Like it's such a low-hanging fruit, because I think that his thought was, well, there's not enough gun owners that care about it, or it's not a hot button subject enough for someone to get up in arms about over it. And to some tiny degree, he might have been a little bit right, because, I mean, there were some people that just really didn't care. But obviously, some of us that are completely on the 2A absolutionist standpoint, like I'm a 2A absolute kind of guy. Like, I want Second Amendment to be what it is and as it's written. You know, I want to be able to own whatever I want as much as I want and it not be a big deal, right? And I want that for everyone. So I'm not saying that I fall into that camp. I'm just recognizing that that camp does exist. Now, when we see the FPC and the GOA mainly the GOA set forth a lawsuit on this bump stock thing that actually wound up setting forth a really cool precedence when it comes to how this stuff can be treated. So basically, I think it was like the Ninth Circuit or somebody, one of the circuit courts.
I believe it was the Ninth.
I think it was the Ninth Circuit Court. They wound up determining, right, that a federal alphabet agency, get this, I mean, now, I know this is crazy, okay, to think about it like this, because some people just don't realize it's really this simple, right? The ATF does not make laws. All right, Congress makes laws, right? There is a checks and balances. There's a system for how we have separation of powers in this country. There is a organized system for how we introduce a bill. It goes through the House, goes through the Senate, does its thing. Or if it starts in the Senate, it goes through the House. If it starts in the House, it goes through the Senate, vice versa. And then it's got to go to the president's desk to be signed into law, right? The problem is that an alphabet agency, in this case the ATF, does not have the lawful authority to change the law without changing the law. You can't just reinterpret. You can't go, well, we'd like to make this tiny change to the wording, or we'd like to change this definition to this, but you can't do that without changing the law. So that would require them to say, okay, they would have to basically push through the Gun Control Act of 68 or whatever that created some of these weird standards. You get into the 922R and the import compliance and like some of these definitions that they came up with back in the 60s and stuff, and around 68 or so, I believe. So when we get into that, the issue then becomes, right, is that in order to change the standard to something that is a little bit more workable for their tyranny, okay, it's more workable for them to be able to go after the people they want to go after in the 2A world, whether it's people that are 3D printing their own suppressors or 3D printing their own lowers, whether it's completing an 80% lower, which is completely lawful. I mean, in the United States, it is a perfectly lawful and normal activity for a person to make their own firearm. But the issue is because society at large, or at least you're led to believe that society at large has some crazy, glowing, glaring issue with it, that they feel like they have to swoop in like the social justice warriors that they are, in the nanny state that they are, and they have to apply some token to this situation to appease a very vocal minority that literally just doesn't exist. I mean, if you ask the average gun owner at large, they're just trying to figure out the difference between a handgun, a rifle, and a shotgun, just for their own basic tendencies to be able to be a first-time gun owner. They're concerned about that. They're not diving into the deep, well-trodden minutia of what an 80%er is, or what it means to make your own gun, or how you chamber your own rifle barrel, or how you fit an action or blueprint an action, or how you glass bed a stock, or how you do anything even marginally related to the technical aspects of firearms.
Yeah, and here's the thing. You've always been able to make your own firearms. Nothing changed there. It was always legal.
Right.
You just couldn't sell it. So when they started going after 80% lowers, whether they're like the polymer 80s or even like the lower receivers where you have to mill it out, if they're so concerned about criminals getting a hold of those and using them, they didn't learn that criminals don't follow the law anyways. So even if they were to do everything they could, criminals are always going to be able to get, quote, illegal firearms, because that's what criminals do.
If someone is going through, let's just say, some extremely black market situation in order to get a gun or whatever, right? They're not going to buy something like that anyway.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Like, there are people that's what they do, is they run guns, right? So there's an entire black market where people can buy all kinds of stuff like that and it's all over the place. And you'd be surprised the kind of stuff you can buy. And I'm not even going to go as to venture too far in this podcast to mention, but like, you know, it's not outside the norm for some cartel member working out of the United States, or really any type of criminal enterprise, whatever it may be. It's not entirely impossible to buy things like grenades and RPGs and machine guns,
especially
and
in some
claymore
of the
mines,
yeah.
and grenades. You know, so the people that are doing really super terrible, heinous things with guns when it comes to just criminal activity, as we would all define it as criminal activity. I'm not going to go down this rabbit hole because I think there's a lot of things that are illegal that shouldn't be illegal. Okay, but besides the point. Okay. Besides the point, there are a lot of criminal enterprises where, I mean, yeah, these guys are being guarded with light machine guns, and they're being guarded with claymores in their yard. And yeah, that stuff ain't exactly kosher. And yeah, they don't just waltz into Walmart and buy it. Like, there's an entire underbelly society that involves getting some of that really specialized hardware. And do you think for 1 second that a serious criminal enterprise that actually needs guns to operate on a regular basis, especially at that level, do you think they're going to buy some Polymer 80 basement-made, you know, Glock that someone milled out? No. They're going to buy a legit, like, Glock 18, or they're going to buy a factory machine gun, and they're going to get it through whatever channels they need to do. So criminals don't obey laws. They don't care what your social construct is that you have chosen as your acceptable means for how firearms should be handled. That doesn't exist in their mind. They're criminals, right? You're only hurting the law-abiding people. And if anything, you're making it harder for law-abiding citizens to protect themselves and have the tools necessary to do that job.
So good examples are, in the U.S., there's that, and I'm using air quotes, quote, good guy with a gun myth. So they say, oh, there's the good guy with the gun. Well, the fact that you even have the ability to have that happen is amazing. If you look at, one, because we have the Second Amendment and we can carry guns and we're able to do whatever we want to. 2 countries recently that heavily regulate firearms. One, United Kingdom. Good luck. Only bad guys have guns in the UK. Yet in a country that's extremely heavily regulated, somehow someone got a gun and shot one of the UK BLM founders in the head at a party. All right. So tell me, in a country where everything is so regulated, only the bad people have guns. Okay, check. Got it. Even more recently, Russia regulates firearms extremely hard. They had a shooting there with bad guys. Those countries, there is no option for a good guy with a gun scenario because it doesn't exist. So here in the U.S., the one that comes to mind, the teacher that saved the student, the little girl from getting kidnapped from the playground, that was probably like a week ago or 2 weeks ago. Good guy with the gun. Stopped a kidnapping of an 11-year-old girl. All right. Before that, it was the guy in the church, that shot the guy. 2 guys at a church. One that chased the guy down with an AR-15, and another one shot the guy inside of the congressional area. So those scenarios exist. They work. Most recently, they do. But other countries it's showing that the fact that we do have the right to defend ourselves and others and protect others puts us in a different category as any other country.
Jack Wilson was that gentleman's name.
Yes.
Fired the shot in the church.
Yeah, the old 357.
I think it was a 357 SIG.
SIG, that's what it was. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, hey,
interesting caliber choice.
Here's the thing, and society is very guilty of this, and it's very easy for people to sort of surround themselves with their own dogmas and biases and their own little emotional and physical bubble that they create around themselves and their existence. I mean, people tend to be very egotistical. A lot of people tend to be very, very narcissistic. And people tend to have that tendency where they kind of get into their little tribes and they stay there and they don't have an open mind about anything, whether it's meeting people, maybe people that don't look like them or believe the same things that they do, right? Whatever bias that person creates, they sort of surround themselves with it. It becomes like, I wouldn't compare it to a bubble. It almost becomes like a cocoon that you're sort of festering in a little bit. So it's like it's very easy for people to have a very limited scope on a given subject or maybe people are of the mindset where they don't really think about how that affects them until it affects them. And it's really easy for people to just have their head buried in the sand and just pretend that a given issue doesn't exist or isn't important because it doesn't directly affect them. And I think that the Second Amendment, and when it comes to gun legislation and efforts of the anti-gunners to get legislation passed on the Hill, the reason that you see so much legislation being proposed, especially by the Democrat side, is I think that they are relying on low information people. They're relying on people that are willing to be spoon-fed a given narrative in relation to a certain subject, right? And with guns, there are a lot of people. Now, it's a changing face because more people are getting into guns, and that's great. The more people we have learning about guns and accepting gun ownership as a normal, basic American right, the better, right? But the issue is that they rely on such low information people that have gotten all the facts. It's not that they're dumb people. They're just ignorant when it comes to that one thing, right? And they'll prey on it and they'll hone in on it. And because they know that their voter base is ignorant on a given subject because it doesn't really affect them, right? Or at least they want to pretend it doesn't exist, they create a situation where emotionally they're being emotionally controlled and they're being actually told what their opinion is on a given subject rather than them garnering that opinion through actual observation and gathering all the facts and statistics and data and letting the facts be your guide and not some overseer with a D next to their name that's just going to tell you what you need to think. They
also have a tendency to be in an echo chamber. A lot of organizations, definitely organizations, but a lot of people they take an anti-gun stance, tend to live in an echo chamber where everybody has the same mindset, which is guilty of everybody that's into something. If that's like if you're into parachuting, then you tend to hang out with people that are into parachuting, and that's what you talk about.
Right.
But when you start looking at how the echo chambers operate, all right, so you have a whole bunch of anti-gunners that are all together, but then they start trying to gift wrap stuff into very broad terms. Like if you're like, oh, common sense gun control, doesn't that sound very broad? And they try to dress it up and they make it sound palatable to where even someone that is that doesn't have a outlook on anything, they're in the middle. They're not pro-gun, they're not anti-gun, but when they hear something like that, they kind of get sucked into it and they're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. It's common sense. But then you start digging into it and you start reading it, and there's nothing common sense about it. It's a basic civics lesson. If you don't understand civics or basic constitutional rights or law, then there's nothing common sense about it. It doesn't make sense.
Well, it's the equivalent of a lawmaker. Let's just say I'm an anti-gun lawmaker or whatever, and I want to propose something that sounds palatable, but in reality, it's pretty wide-ranging. Let's compare it to, okay, if I made a statement as a politician, let's just say this isn't even gun-related. Anyway, say that I was a politician and I made this statement. I'm like, hey, we should pass some laws, all right, that make it a lot harder for women to be attacked by rapists. Okay, if you look at the totality of that statement, all right, it makes perfect sense. Like, okay, who wouldn't want to find a way to protect women from rapists? Like, that just seems logical. Of course, well, who wouldn't be okay with that? So they package it in a way that it's impossible to say no to because on the surface you're kind of like, well, wait a minute, what's so bad? But the issue, okay, now we look into this bill that this evil lawmaker is going to propose. Oh, but you get to read my bill and you realize that it's going to require for every man to be castrated. You know what I mean? So it's like, what length are you willing to go to get that super basic, watered down thing that you're speaking very generally about, right? Oh, common sense gun control. Well, your idea of common sense gun control might be disarming everyone. Well, that's the equivalent of castrating everybody to protect against rapists.
Yeah.
Or it'd be the equivalent of, all right, this person's a rape victim over here. Oh, but you 5 people there, y'all have male parts. No, we need to castrate all the men, right? I mean, it's like that. See how crazy that sounds? So if I were a lawmaker and I delivered it in such a direct term as that, you'd be like, whoa, hang on a second, this is getting a little silly here, right? So the issue is if they go to the goal that they're trying to go to just essentially on what it is and not such a broad and general term, people start to go, now, wait a second, we're not having this, right? I don't want my AR-15 taken away. I don't want to have, a more strict licensing requirement for me to own a gun. I'm already busy enough as it is, right? I got to schedule an appointment to go to the probate court. I got to pay a fee. I got to go through all this paperwork and this bull crap and have a background check ran just to carry a gun. Actually, I'm about to have to renew mine. I think it's a dumb idea to have a carry permit. But you know what? It's the law here, and it keeps me from getting screwed with. So I just do it, and I just deal with it because I just don't want to get messed with by anybody, and it's just not worth it, all the potential issue it would cause me versus having it, right? But right. Some people are really busy, and they don't have time for all that crap,
That, and the fact that it's required is an infringement in and of itself. Mm-hmm. So...
Well, like I say, I don't agree with it.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think anybody that agrees with having to take time out of your work day for only 2 hours that right. There's a window there.
And not to mention pay a fee to exercise a right.
Yeah, but you have a very small window of opportunity there, and it's cash only. So hope you only have your cash with you because they only take cash. Yeah. So it's just like this whole dog and pony show, all these hoops you have to jump through. What you were describing sounds very similar to a high-risk protection order, how they try to wrap it and make it sound like who wouldn't be against, or who would be against high-risk protection orders?
Well, to be completely fair, though, okay, and I'm not saying that I agree with those orders because I certainly don't, and that's not even what I'm going to talk about here, but the pro-gun side is relatively effective at doing the same thing. All right. So, all right, we tried to get the Hearing Protection Act passed.
This is true.
Okay, now, all right, the Hearing Protection Act. That sounds good, right? You want to protect your hearing. So the way it's packaged, yeah, it matters whether it's a pro-gun bill or an anti-gun bill. So, to be fair, both sides of the aisle do it to kind of package it in a way that's the most palatable with the people they think they need to change the minds of. So it's not just an exclusive thing that the anti-gunners do. The pro-gunners also package things and make it a little more friendly. And, I could see why you do it.
So that is interesting. That's an interesting point because in Europe, where weapons and guns are heavily regulated, they actually require you to have a suppressor, a sound silencer in some countries, and it's very uncouth of you if you don't use one while out hunting. So you're not bothering your neighbors.
Yeah.
Your neighbors don't want to be bothered with your pheasant hunt or your your hunting expedition on your land.
You also have to remember too that in a lot of places like that, recreational shooting is not looked at in the same vein as it is here. Mm-hmm. Here it might be normal for a grandpa and his grandson to go out and burn up 1,500 rounds of .22 in one day with an unsuppressed Ruger 10/22 in the backyard, and they might be going at it for hours on end shooting. Especially if you're only talking a state where you've got 10-round mags. A standard capacity Ruger magazine for the 10/22 is a 25-round BX-25. Mm-hmm. Okay, but even with 25-shot mags, I mean, it can take you all day to sit there and shoot a brick or two of ammo
because you're having to load it up so many
right.
times.
So we approach shooting in a lot different way than they do. They may not go out and spend a whole afternoon shooting. They might take a rifle out and just verify zero for hunting or something. But I think the concept of just recreational shooting is not something that is quite as celebrated in other countries like it is here, especially not targets that have even the most minute amount of human analog to them. Well, right? You would never see them shooting at a human silhouette or anything like that. And definitely not like drawing a pistol and doing training or, deploying a rifle from a vehicle or drawing a pistol from a carrier or doing some type of, injured shooter drill or anything even remotely related to training with a pistol. You definitely won't see that at all in a lot of those countries.
Well, there's a few European countries that are coming around. I think the Czech Republic just introduced their concealed carry or personal weapons legislation.
Well, they actually have their version of the Second Amendment now.
And well, that and they have like some type of reciprocity with the few other countries that are surrounding them. But that's really cool to see other countries adopting that. I know the Philippines is a heavily like gun culture country. You wouldn't think so, but man, you go to the Philippines, it's just guns everywhere. Like
I actually read an article. And I don't remember exactly where it was, so I'm not going to try to quote the exact article, but I just happened to see it in passing. It was an article about how a lot of the ladies originally from like Thailand and from the islands and from some of those types of countries, you know, are very much down with like the American prepper mentality and like, you know, people that want to stay ready and be ready and provide, you know, for their families and just, you know, they have a certain amount of respect and admiration for like manly men. And I thought that was kind of cool to read that article that, you know, their ladies are all about like, yeah, I want to be protected. I want to have a strong male role model as a husband in the family. So it's like they're down with those traditional nuclear family social values that
they are.
Of course, the left has completely, you know, denounced, right, that type of existence, right? When you look at this just modern Marxism movement, I'm not going to get like too far down the weeds on this, but like BLM and just the modern Marxist, progressive Marxist movement, it's very much about breaking down the structures of a traditional nuclear family, whatever that's supposed to mean.
Yeah, that's just exactly what it is.
The traditional family unit, right? So there are, you know, people that come from certain parts of the world where they have to deal with a lot of terrible stuff, and surviving is a lot harder, and the threshold for everyday life and what's required to live everyday life normally is much harder than what we have here. And when those folks immigrate here and move here, a lot of them, they bring those values along. They're like, hey, you know, I understand what it's like to work and have to provide and be able to protect myself from bad people. And hey, I understand the value of gun ownership because I came from some terrible country that has these extreme socialist values, and you can't own guns, and there's murder everywhere, and all kind of terrible things going on. And when they escape that and come here, they realize, hey, like we're all about freedom because I just came from somewhere where I don't have freedom, and I didn't come from such a, you know, a great place to live. And then when they come here, they're like, wow, you know, now that they know what freedom's like, they sort of guard it and protect it. So I think there's a double-edged sword in terms of the population densities and the population demographics in the United States, where people go, well, we've got all these illegal immigrants coming in and things like that, and that changes demographics. And of course, people assume that they vote a certain way, and that's probably true in the sense of a certain block of people, though. But I think there are a lot of people, no matter how they might be coming here, I'm not legal, whichever direction you want to look at it from. There are a lot of people that immigrate here that understand that this is a really awesome place to live and certainly don't want to change it at all. They want, you know, the freedoms that come along with it. They want to be able to buy a gun, protect themselves, you know, that whole thing. That this country recognizes and values human rights and natural rights. And I can't think of anyone, especially if they've ever been subjected to a lesser way of living, that they would want to change that for what they just escaped from.
And that's the thing, all right? And I'm so glad you mentioned that because, you know, on our website, we sell merch, obviously. But we sell a lot of merch that has to do with like anti-Marxist, anti-communist stuff like that. So I have quite a few shirts that are, you know, one is I have a tank top. It says "Kill a Commie for Mommy." It's like a vintage style design, and we have another one that says "Better Red Than Dead," and it's the hook, the hammer sickle with the little Ghostbusters X through it. Both of those shirts, every time I wear them, I always get compliments, and every single time it is from somebody that is from a country that experienced it. So I was wearing the Better Dead Than Red t-shirt, and we were at the park with my daughter, and I had a family of Ukrainians come up to me, and they said, "We love your shirt. You know, where can we buy it?" So I pointed them in the right direction, but obviously they've experienced firsthand what that is. And then Saturday or Sunday, I went to our neighborhood pool, and I was wearing the, you know, "Kill a Commie for Mommy" tank top. And funny enough is I had a family from South Florida that were Cuban, and they came up to me and they were like, "That's the best shirt. I love that shirt." And they were like, "Oh, we're from Cuba." And they kind of went into it. And I just find it interesting that, everything that America stood for as a country, the beacon of freedom, other countries flock here so they can participate and accept it. But there's a section of Americans that wish to tear it apart. So it's very interesting to me when I think about it that we have so many immigrants that come in here legally that are wanting to experience the human value or the American values and participate and make America a better place. And then at the same time, we have natural born Americans that are fighting against that. And it just blows me away.
I really do want to believe in my heart that there are a lot of people that are coming here that do want to come here to live in peace and live in freedom and really assimilate to the culture that is American values and that are, our respect for natural rights and the good things that come along with that, right? Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness can be seen in a lot of different ways, right? When you look at life, liberty, and the pursuit, it can be taken as a selfish connotation. Well, that's selfish. You do not care about anyone else. Well, no, that's not it. It's to honor and respect that basic function in society that people have the right to choose the life and the freedom that they want for it and to live their life the way they want to. And we have a very strong emphasis on human rights here. So much so that there are areas of our society where people have created the boogeyman out of nothing. Things are so good that people have to go out of their way to create some crazy, fantasy thing to be upset about. We have it so good that people have to dream up things to complain about. That's how good it is here. So I would like to think that on the construct of immigration and people coming here and assimilating to our culture, I'd like to think that the ones that come here trying to change things to what they escape from, I would like to think that it definitely is outweighed by the ones that actually want to assimilate to our culture from a holistic kind of view, Not to say we're perfect, because we're not, but I think the founding documents and, our Bill of Rights and the Constitution and all of these natural rights that we have recognized in the founding documents of our country, I believe is as close to the most perfect form of government you could ask for. I think the checks and balances wrote into our system is fair, and it works pretty well, and it's held us up pretty good as long as we can keep those checks and balances in place. Our founding fathers did not ever intend for it to be a 2 or 3 party or multi-party system, right? They wanted a government where people were viewed on their individual traits and how best they represented the people that they were going to represent as in the Senate or in the House or whatever. So I think that, when you go back and read the Federalist Papers and you read some, more of that type of documentation, it puts a little more into context that even though the world was a lot different back then, there were certain things that we certainly would not do today that were normal, in those times. You look at the slave trade. That's obviously a dark stain on the past of humanity, right? Not just American culture, but humanity, right?
Yep.
At the time, you're talking a social construct that was normal all around the world, right? Like it wasn't, I think people kind of wrongly associate it just with, us doing that or whatever versus, well, the whole world was doing that. There was an entire global trade that treated people as a commodity. And yes, that's wrong, and it goes completely against natural rights. But I'd like to think there are certain areas where we've gone forward in our society and certain areas we could always use some more work on, of course. I'm not going to say that's not the case. And I'm not saying we're not perfect, or that we're perfect. But I would like to think that Second Amendment is such an important role in our society that even the people that don't understand it or care for it benefit from it without even realizing it. That's the thing. If we lose the Second Amendment, we are going to be going down a very terrible path, and there won't be any return from it that doesn't require things getting kinetic.
I'm going to, and this is maybe something we can brainstorm later, but I encounter a very large number of ethnic minorities at my shop. So we do ballisticking, but we also run our family business as well. And 90% of our customers are all different types of people. So all types, all walks of life. And we're really good friends because we've been doing business with all these customers for years, like some of them 20 years. I am legitimately going to ask them and say, I'm just going to start recording it and say, hey, why did you come to the U.S.? What is it about the U.S. that you enjoy? What made you choose America over any other country? And I think if I can get, concise answers from all these different people from all walks of life,
maybe compile it.
We can compile it. We'll throw it up and let everybody see it. And I think that'd be a great experiment because everybody will get a chance to see what drives people to come to America.
We've done that a little bit. Okay. If you guys have ever, if you're watching here on YouTube, I'm sure you've seen some of our gun gripes where we've actually covered rallies and things like that.
Yeah, that's great stuff.
Very similar to that, kind of a man on the street sort of style of doing things. Now, if you're listening on the podcast over on Iraq Veteran 8888, we do have multiple videos related to these types of subjects if you want to check them out. Shameless plug there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you have the means, and I think that'd be a great, because it's not just getting into gun culture, but American culture, into like what makes us great and all that good stuff. So it can be, it can be both.
It can. And what's so interesting too is, people always associate, and I don't know why, like you see in society, people get so angry about this cultural appropriation, right? Oh, well, how dare you appropriate that person's culture? But I disagree. I think that in the U.S., we are such a mixing pot of cultures. We embrace culture from all around the world, right? I mean, you look at these fashion designers that get in trouble because, oh, you're appropriating Japanese culture in your designs that you do for your clothing or whatever, your clothing line. And, well, so what? Is that to say that Japanese culture is not this wonderful jewel that we can all, accept as being, hey, that's cool. We like that. Like we integrate those things into our cultures, right? We enjoy experiencing other people's cultures and then taking things from that culture that we think are cool and kind of integrating it into our own. I think that that's accepting, right? To accept other people's cultures. But one way to look at it too is when you look at the roof Koreans, right? And there's this term that gets thrown around about during the LA riots, okay, the grocery store owners there, they're mostly South Koreans, got up on their roof with their guns and they kept the people that were trying to loot and the looters at bay. And they were able to save their store from getting burned and looted.
Very effectively.
Yeah. And of course, there are people that maybe are a little bit short-sighted and they think, well, that's appropriating, their culture, or, oh, that's being, potentially racist, or that's a politically sensitive issue, or that's not politically correct to showcase that. Why not? All I saw were Americans on the roof of their business protecting themselves. And when we say roof Koreans, it's a term of endearment. Like
it really is.
It really is a term of endearment because you love seeing success stories in the Second Amendment. Had it been any other type of business owner that did the same thing, I'd be happy to see that too. But it paints a very specific story for the end user when they see these South Korean immigrants who came here and they did it all through the correct channels, got their firearms through the correct channels. A lot of them served in the military in South Korea. You have a compulsive military service, so everybody at least does some basic training and serves a short stint.
2 years.
Right, 2 years. So when you see that these people came here and understood that we viewed natural rights as a very important jewel that you're not going to touch and get near, and they realized, wow, we have guns as tools to protect our business against people that would take away our livelihood. So when you look at it under that lens and you understand the totality, it's very touching to see when people use the Second Amendment, or at least recognize the Second Amendment and exercise their rights to protect themselves.
Without a doubt. And I can tell you that Koreans accept that as a term of endearment. We've sold more roof Korean shirts going into South Korea than I can actually count. I mean, they were flying overseas to Korea, and not to like American army bases in Korea, like to Koreans in awesome. Korea. So I mean, it was really cool.
That's the thing. It creates this pop culture icon that people create through their actions, right? I mean, you can wear a Roof Korean t-shirt and you don't think, oh, well, I'm appropriating someone's culture. No, that's American culture, right? You're wearing that shirt and you're proud of what those guys accomplished together, and they banded together and they protected their business. And that's one of the most American things you could possibly ever think of, is for some immigrants to come here, assimilate to being Americans, own guns. And you know what? Not to say that you're not going to be who you were born as, or that you're not going to, love your original culture where you came from. No one's telling you to, drop everything you know about where you came from. No, of course not. But I think it's worth noting, hey, I'm a Korean guy living in California. I'm going to open up my own grocery store. Mm-hmm. And you know what? Hey, we're in America. I get to use the Second Amendment, and I'm going to protect my Korean grocery store with my K2 Daewoo service rifle that I went and bought down the street from the guy. So, I think there's nothing more American than that.
Yeah. And I mean, just to, recap the episode, I know we talked about some great stuff, but the thing that I really want to key in on is that states are taking back their rights, and I'm not going to say seceding from the federal government, but they are showing that they have more of a backbone on standing up for their own individual states' rights. And I pray that every state at least attempts to put through legislation for constitutional carry, because as they're stripping away federal rights and trying to impose federal legislation, the states, that's where the buck stops. And that started with the whole marijuana, medical grade marijuana. And then I think Colorado or Washington were like, you know what? It's against the law federally, but as a state, we're going to make our own laws. And that opened the door for the firearms, because they said, well, hey, if you can do that for a Schedule 1 drug that's illegal, like full-blown illegal to the federal government, then the states have every right to fight tooth and nail for a constitutional right.
That's right. And I think that you're also seeing that where the states are adopting, Second Amendment sanctuary clauses in a lot of their laws and ordinances and things. And I think that's a healthy environment. What actual legal clout that will have and what the law enforcement locally will actually do with that is another story, or another question, I guess, if you will.
It'll rest with your sheriff.
It certainly will. Sheriff is a relatively powerful official in the law enforcement community, because your sheriff is an elected official. They answer to the people. If you have a problem in your community, talk to your sheriff.
The sheriff is by law, is the ultimate law enforcement authority for that region. And this is per the law. The sheriff has jurisdiction over their entire region, and they voluntarily cede that responsibility to the police chief. It's volunteer. They don't have to do it. They do it out of convenience.
A sheriff can also deputize you on the side of the road.
Correct. But that's why it's so important for sheriffs, because ultimately they have the final say in what does and does not get enforced.
I mean, I know our sheriff here locally, he is very approachable and he's a very easygoing guy. I've never really had a single problem out of him, okay? Your mileage may vary, okay?
There are some really, there
are some that aren't exactly cool, and they're not easy to talk to. They're elitist, they're very high on the hog, and they're very much trying to climb, some sort of a political ladder, but it is cool to see a lot of the states fighting back against some of this stuff and being very vocal about wanting to get constitutional carry passed. I think that's a good first step. But in order for us to really fight back, the Second Amendment is going to have to wind up being the prohibition of our time. Like I've talked about in so many different gun gripes and in so many different podcasts, right? The reason prohibition was not successful was because after a while, they realized the gig was up. People were going to drink. There were speakeasies on every corner. Then people started just sitting out on the street drinking it. They didn't care what the law enforcement thought. Then they ended up finding out that a lot of their cop buddies were in the speakeasies drinking. Mm-hmm. So when the sheriff's in the speakeasy drinking,
including Elliot Ness.
Yeah, I mean, including, these high-profile federal agents are in the speakeasies drinking.
And they're poisoning their own people.
How can you, by night, get drunk in the speakeasy and then by day go and bust the barrels? It's like, isn't that hypocritical? And I think they realized it was time to just move on past it. And I think that that's what it's going to happen for the Second Amendment community and for gun rights in general, right? I think people are going to realize, well, it doesn't matter what law we try to pass, people just aren't going to comply anyway. So after a while, you're going to realize, well, you're spinning your wheels. It's like the Harry Potter movie, right? Which one was it that had Umbridge in it? Which Harry Potter movie was that? I think it was.
I'm not Order of the Harry
Phoenix.
Potter fan.
Well, anyway, okay. So like, I always use this reference because it's a good reference, right? It's like in Harry Potter when Umbridge tells the castle keeper guy there to go and put up all the different signs, and there's rule after rule after rule, and there's so many rules on the freaking wall that he's got to get this big ladder to hang them all up, and they're trying to enforce every little tiny rule they can, and of course the students. And doing what kids do, they do what they want, and they end up finding a way around it. So society is very much just a larger version of that type of situation, right? They can pass all the laws they want, but society and people at large are going to do what they want to do, right? We see that with drug laws. We see that with gun laws. We see that with tons of different regulations. So the question is, how much of a criminal society wants to make you for doing what they know you're going to do anyway, regardless of what the law is.
Yep. I couldn't have said it better myself. And I think the turning point was when, during Prohibition, they ended up poisoning a whole bunch of Americans because the plan was to poison the alcohol and that way they would get sick, except they died, which was terrible. But that was that turning point. And I do think that there's going to be a point in time where non-compliance will be the turning point of saying, you know what, well, let's just give this up because it's not worth it. It's not worth it on their end.
I think they're realizing it, but we have to keep the pressure on them. If you're a new gun owner, it's important that you be an ambassador to the shooting and everything, and an ambassador to firearms ownership, and get people involved, because the more folks understand that it's a normal thing, the better off we're going to be in terms of our rights not being infringed on, especially by politicians moving forward. So thanks for tuning in. We have many more of our podcasts on the way. We hope you'll join us next Friday for Life, Liberty, and the Pursuit. We do have more flights on the way. We didn't have an opportunity to film one today, but we are going to be doing some more food and drink flights. So stay tuned for that. I think we're going to be doing a pepper flight. So you better get your big boy panties out for that, because you're going to have to... You're going to have to be eating some hot peppers with me.
Got my gallon of milk with me.
All right. Yeah, it's okay. We'll let you have your gallon of milk. I can put a nipple on that for you if you need me to. Okay, but we are going to be doing pepper flight and some other drinks and stuff. And, in this podcast, we do discuss a ton of different things. So make sure you tune in. If you're listening to us on the podcast outlets, leave us a good rating. That'll help us show up in the search results a little better.
Absolutely.
If you're watching here on YouTube, be sure to leave us a like, comment. Please leave a comment and share it with your buddies. Have a good one. Many more podcasts on the way. We'll see you next Friday.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks for listening to Life, Liberty, and Pursuit. If you enjoyed the show, be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and anywhere else podcasts are found. Be sure to leave us a 5-star review. We'd really appreciate that. You can support us over on Ballistic Ink by picking yourself up some merch. And remember, guys, danger is freedom. Have a good one.